So first off, I just want to give a huge thank you to TEDx for inviting me to be here as a speaker. It is such an honor to be here on stage, and I feel super blessed. So what I'm going to talk about is actually how self-reflection aids in giving clarity for, your decisions in the future. But I'd like to share an honest story way before I get into my talk. So there I was on my phone, scrolling through social media, and then out of the blue I got a message through an invitation to speak at TED. What do you think my first reaction was? I was excited, of course. I'm excited. But then what do you think my feelings and reactions were after I said yes? Pressure, right? I was horrified. The minute I said yes, I dropped my phone and I'm like, what am I doing? This is crazy intimidating to be here on stage. Later down the line, I see the other lineup. How do you think I felt? I can't hear so well, but I'll just pretend I'm hearing you. Pressured, right? I saw resumes of an award-winning filmmaker. I saw an environmentalist. I saw the owner of a biotech company. I'm like, really? What's going on? Like, what, right? But it's triggers. It's a lot of triggers. It's a lot of wondering. And that's what comes up a lot when anyone actually faces, say, the next chapter of where their growth is. You get really nervous. You compare yourself a lot. You feel so intimidated. You wonder if you can do this or not. And then you start reflecting. And that's how I came up with my topic today. Yeah, through emotions. No, yeah? Woo! Guys at the back, you can stay in front now. You're like my cheer squad. So that's how it all happened. So I had to take a step back. And I'm like, okay, Vicky, you're nervous. You are, your anxiety is coming back. What's happening for you? I took a step back, thought about it, and I said, oh, I know where this is coming from, okay? This is coming from my feelings of unworthiness and my feelings that I'm just not good enough. Just like my slide. So it came up for me again. Okay, what if I'm not good enough, et cetera, et cetera. Or sorry, maybe I'm not good enough, that's what I said. And then I thought, okay, how do I get myself out of this feeling of being scared? So I started asking myself questions. How can I prepare better? What else is this coming up for me? Why do I feel pressured to know all the answers on stage, right? So what came up for me was this. I realized that my ego, that little ego, had the need to look perfect, had the need to have all the answers, and had the need to basically know it all. And it gives you a lot of pressure when you're operating from that space. So I realized, and this is a big lesson also in my life that I'd like to share, it's actually best when you kill your ego and you ask questions from a place of you ask questions from a place of curiosity and humility. And it's best to always admit the things you don't know. Takes the pressure off, right? Because in life, you have a lot of situations where you might not know all the answers all the time. You might feel pressured to know everything all the time. But how do you get past that? You start asking questions. And I'll explain further in this talk. Okay, and these are really practical ways on how I got myself out of that rut. So moving forward. When is the best time to ask questions? So the best time to ask questions is obviously when you don't know the answer. Duh. Well, what comes up in my life is that, number one, you're at a crossroads in your life. That's a great time to ask a question. Another time to ask questions is when you're stuck in a rut, like what happened to me. Another great time to ask questions is when the same situation is happening over and over and over again and you don't like the result. So in situations like that, we're on autopilot. We know the same thing happens over and over again, but we don't move ourselves out, right? So what I was learning was like, okay, so that's when you ask the right questions, but what are the right questions? Because earlier, if you could see, my questioning was, oh my God, am I good enough? Am I worthy? Et cetera, et cetera. Those weren't the questions I should have been asking. I should have been asking the more solution-based questions on how to get out of that situation. So what I learned was, Don't question yourself, but ask questions for yourself. So in that frame of mind, it's not about questioning yourself and your self-worth and do you deserve to be there, et cetera, et cetera. You are worthy, you are enough. Those, it's just feelings of insecurity that come up. But what's more important is you ask questions for yourself to move you to a more positive place, to be able to get yourself out of that space of, anxiety. So this is pretty much what I learned as I was also making this talk. Now, how I want to illustrate it for you guys is through this. I will talk about 3 different situations in my life where I was stuck in a rut, or the same situation happened over and over again and I didn't like my results. And I will explain to you exactly how my questioning process was and what was born out of that. So would you like to know what happened? At least there's an audience participation here after the break. I'm happy you guys are still here paying attention. So the first example of where I was sort of stuck in a rut had to do with my career, my professional life. So this is a background of what I do, or what I've been doing since I was 17 years old. So I started in the fashion and modeling industry when I was 17. I later became a writer. I got into radio DJing. I had a column in the newspaper. I wrote a book. Again, I wrote for magazines. And these are a lot of different skill sets I was picking up, right? So in front of the camera work, behind the camera work, production work, and that sort of thing. Throughout that time, from 17 to 24, I was working in the Philippines, and then I moved to Singapore to work there for a little bit, and then I moved to Hong Kong to work there for a little bit as well, picking up all sorts of experiences. So in the startup field, I would take that experience. In the sales field, I'd take that experience. I was just honestly taking as many work as I could in my 20s just to gain more life experience. But in Hong Kong, I was 27 years old, and I said, okay, now what do you do with all this experience, right? You're like, oh gosh, I wanted to see the world and understand it better and learn about life, and then now what do I do with it? What do I take all the different hodgepodge of work that I've accumulated over the years? What do I do? And after I had a conversation with my friend, he said, Vicky, why don't you try consulting or, working with brands, creating brands, maybe an agency. I said, that's a really good idea. I think I'll think about it. And, as I thought about it, I really liked it. But first I was like, wait, what's consulting? And how do I run a business? And, those were initial questions I was asking. So I sat with a thought, and I really, really sat with it. And I was like, you know what? It makes sense, because if you look at the path of what I've done since I was 17, a lot of it had to do with communication, and a lot of it had to do with creating content anyway. So I would love to be able to put my vision more into the brands that I work with. And it gave me, such a great feeling in my heart when I started to really think and process and ask questions. So for example, what questions did I ask myself? What type of content do I really want to create? I've been working in the field for over 10 years. What do I want to create? Do I want to write the same stories I did in the past? Do I want to, do the same social media posts I did in the past as well? What do I want to create as Vicky Herrera? What type of brands do I want to support? Guys, I've been working for a long time. I've supported brands that have great intentions. I've supported brands that were actually just about the money, which isn't bad, but at some point when you lose the humanity, it wasn't worth it for me anymore. How do I set up a business was a very practical question, actually. Very smart question to ask when you're really diving to be an entrepreneur. And basically, how do I want to take my life forward? I think this is such an important question in terms of understanding your next step, right? Like your future. So these are questions I ask myself. The result of my processing and my question asking became my current company, which I started. It is called Next Theory. So Next Theory, what I do is I select brands that I work with. They have great intentions. They want to change the world. They are forefront in innovation in their field. They want to disrupt something in their industry, and basically they change the game. These are players I want to work with because I can feel their passion, I can feel their heart, I can feel their intensity, and it's amazing. So for example, if I work with a brand like Fashion Still, like Philippine Fashion Week, I love the fact that they're doing collaborations to support small-scale miners with their Compassionate Gold collaboration. If I work with wellness companies, I love the fact that they're promoting wellness and yoga and meditation and ways for people to de-stress. And lastly, I took on a life coaching client, which, as you guys know, is life coaching. It's coaching, it's support, it's helping other people process as well. And I'll get to how I got there later. So, as you can see, there's a lot of things here that I'm very passionate about as an individual, and I wanted to bring that out and to help brands who are also promoting a similar message. But that wouldn't have happened if I didn't question and ask myself this internal processing work, right? So, by the way, guys, when I got into coaching, people said it wasn't cool, and then I said, I'll make it cool. I'm in branding, okay? It's gonna be fine, right? Because a lot of people will say, oh, that's not cool, that's cool. I'm like, wait a second, I'm a branding company. And I'm also looking for interns, just kidding. Next, what came up for me next is something that's a little bit more personal to my heart that I am so honored just to be here to share with you guys. So a personal trigger that happened to me was, and this is how I got into life coaching, was that I started to struggle with depression and anxiety. And people don't know that about me. I can feel like, I remember when I was going through it too, it was crazy. And people were like, really, Vicky? Like, you're depressed, or you have anxiety? What do you mean? You're a model, or your life looks so glamorous. And I go, it's not about that. I said, I can't even explain why I'm feeling like this. And it's just so, it was hard to understand. And, I remember that girl. I remember how young I was, and I couldn't understand. So, I'm getting emotional, because I'm just, wow, what a journey. I couldn't understand what was happening, so I went to life coaching. I went to see a coach. And I wanted to understand what was going on with me and what was going on in my mental health, in my heart, and I wanted to understand what was going on in my life. So I saw a coach, it was amazing, really helped me through a lot of issues, a lot of unprocessed pain. It helped me deal with my dad's death. It helped me deal with some heartaches I had in my life as well. It helped me clarify a lot of things, and most importantly, let go of a lot of things that were hurting in my heart. And that's why I really support and admire coaches or anyone in the healing field. I think what they're doing is so amazing and important in the world. So these are the questions I asked myself when I was going through life coaching. Why am I depressed? Where's the anxiety coming from? And most importantly, what do I want to feel now? And how do I get there? And those questions help pave the path for what I really, it helped me pave the path for healing and to get myself to a place of, just feeling complete inside and feeling enough and feeling worthy. And I think that's when I have these conversations with people, it turns out a lot of us feel like this as well. We just don't talk about it. So I decided, based on these questions also, is my next step. I wanted to be a coach. So I took everything I learned from pain and healing and heartache and all of that, and I decided, this is so important, I want to do this too. And that questioning process became my future. That path of questioning and processing is now what I do today. And I couldn't have foreseen that 8 years ago, 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, when it was happening to me. So the next part of my presentation has to do with purpose and realizing how the dots connect. So it started with the agency. Around at the same time, I took up coaching. And then all the dots connected through this questioning process to my purpose. So what I was looking at what triggers people, what hurts people, where are people feeling low, I was just looking at the environment and asking people how they're feeling. And a lot of the feelings that were coming up were feelings of insecurity, jealousy, comparing yourself, feeling you're not good enough. A lot of this was actually triggered by social media. And a lot of these feelings came from a lot of women I knew. So there I am, talking to different women, but also sharing my story with them on how I healed. and how I was able to move out of that place and into now this whole place of learning and inspiration and empowerment that I just fell in love with it while I was going through it. So I shared my story and to one person, and I shared my story to another person, and then I shared my story to another woman, and the four of us got together, and we started asking ourselves these questions. Oh, what I did forget to say, which helped me remember, a lot of the times when we feel insecure or jealous or not enough, I read somewhere that it said it's a sign of lack of self-love. So when me and my friends got together to discuss this, we realized the questions we should be asking were, how can we love ourselves better? How can we support other women better versus compete? Because you guys know what happens on social media with a lot of people. How can we spread this message? And how do we help women heal? These are very important questions we wanted to think about, we wanted to marinate on, and we wanted to make a difference in this way. My business partners are Sarah Meyer, who is my co-host and co-author. We have Lynn Pinugu, who is a founder of a nonprofit school, and my last business partner is Isa Calzado, actress and body positive activist, who we all talked about our core issues of self-love. And when we got together, we started this platform called She Talks Asia. So She Talks Asia, it was born just last year in March 2017. It was a crazy ride to just even start our first conference because people had no idea what we were talking about. And that's what happened. So we had to explain again, what is self-love, what is healing, what is this, what is women supporting women, what are these topics? And then to do that, we had to explain also the painful journey we went through, the questioning process we went through. And the more we shared our story, we got other women to share their stories too. So we had, for example, Karen Davila, Sestra Leon, Bianca Gonzalez, great public figures, but also sharing from a space of authenticity and honesty and vulnerability. And what their messages were to the youth, to women, it was so healing. And what I learned was this: through telling your story, you are healing others, and through them healing too, you are also healing yourself. So I'm very, very proud of this platform, She Talks Asia, because it allows a lot of women voices to come out online and as well as in the conference. I've heard stories that have had to do with leadership, with empowerment, with healing from sexual abuse, to even getting over a heartache. And these are things that, again, not everyone always talks about, but it's important to talk about and bring to light so we can all help each other. So yeah, these are three situations in my life: my consulting company, me and my mental health, and lastly, She Talks Asia. These are situations in my life that were born or solved through a questioning process. So here is what I want to leave with you guys to sort of think about and chew on. So what are questions that you need to ask yourself as well? And you know, sometimes these are easy questions, sometimes these are hard questions, and these are questions wherein the answers the answers need courage, and you need to take a little bit of risk, right, in asking it, because the truth, sometimes it's uncomfortable, but it's still important to have it answered. And what I even want to encourage is that you acknowledge the pattern of what's going on, recognize it, see the situation, pause, ask the question, pause even more, listen. Listen to yourself, listen to your inner voice, listen to your intuition. You will guide yourself. Your inner voice will help you discover what your next path is, what your next chapter is. It is so powerful because it's the truth, it's you, it's your authenticity. So with that, guys, the right questions will lead you to clarity. If you really listen, you'll know what to do. And at the end, it's all about living your truth. So that's it for my talk. I'm Victoria Herrera, and thank you for listening.